Samara, hello. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, go on. You tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, Samara. That'd be great.
Thank you, Adam, for your short introduction. So, I am Samara Ullmann. I'm a PR specialist working with Adam and the wider team. I've worked in PR for about 15 years. Absolutely love everything about the industry, and really enjoy working within the care sector for so many reasons. I guess one being as Adam rightly says, the opportunity to secure TV coverage, which is a great thing for so many reasons. Um, yeah, I can't recommend it enough. And having been in a position to secure TV coverage for care homes, the benefits that it has, not necessarily just in terms of the awareness and the opportunity to be seen in your local on your local 6 p.m. news, but also what it does for the staff and the morale and the family and the resident. It just brings everybody together in a real sort of sense of excitement of, oh my gosh, this is so exciting that, there's film crew here and they're recording a story and we're going to see it on the TV. So in addition to obviously the great PR opportunity it presents for a care home, the internal benefits as well, and sort of like I mentioned, the morale is yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah, no, 100%. And let's maybe just focus on why care homes may be the value and why care homes may be wanting to get themselves on the TV. Let's put it maybe in the picture of the wider picture of how it fits in, perhaps as a kind of a PR marketing strategy, and why care homes may want to do this, and why it may what kind of bigger picture achievement it may or strategy it may fit in for them.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, ultimately, you've got to think about who your end user is. Who is that person that's making that call to your care home for a loved one, for a friend, and what kind of media are they consuming? And when we have, the kind of information that we have, the insights that we have into those types of people, they tend to be 45 plus, who, may be at home watching the 6 p.m. news, or they've grown up with the 6 p.m. news and they'll have it on in the background. And it's a huge platform for any care home to be seen within. And I guess once you've generated the coverage, it doesn't end there, because you can then share that coverage on your social media channels. You can widen that press coverage. And, we're not talking about negative press. This is all positive. This is all proactive PR. So it's all stories that we've worked with you to generate and create and packaged up for the press. And so it doesn't just end with, oh, 6 p.m. news done. It's what happens from that point on. And often the bigger picture is, once you've secured your first piece of press coverage with your local TV, so whether, as Adam says, BBC or ITV,
Mm.
they do remember you. And if there is a story related to the care sector, very often they'll reach back out and say, oh, by any chance, do you have somebody that might be able to comment on this story that's broken in the press, for example? So there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a bit of a domino effect. You establish your first piece of coverage with them, and as long as well, not even as long as you maintain, but often 9 times out of 10 they will remember, and they'll have you know your care home manager or your wellbeing coordinator who gave a great interview back of mind for potential stories moving forward as well. And yeah, like I said, you're hitting your key demographic, your key audience. And I've worked with clients in the past where stories have gone on the 6 p.m. news, and the following day there's been calls direct to the care home saying, oh, I saw the story about the budgies. How wonderful that you got budgies for your resident who was struggling with feeling isolated and wanted, was needed a bit of support. So the care team bought this particular resident some budgies, and that was covered on the news. And you almost can generate an instant reaction from that local presence on
Mm.
television.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it's worth for those listeners, the efforts to get care homes on the TV news, as we're talking about, is often part of a generic strategy as Samara, as you're talking about here, Samara, is to promote the homes to get noticed and seen by the audiences that you want to get seen and noticed by, to raise a profile, which will be those prospective family members. And the TV coverage, generally, for certainly for those care providers that we help, is just part of that strategy. It's a key part, but it's part of an overall strategy to improve the reputation and profile and what I tend to call the word of mouth. Every care home we speak to, Samara, say they get word of mouth inquiries. That's fabulous. But if you want to increase your profile and reputation, to increase the likelihood of word of mouth inquiries, then you basically need to shout out about everything you're doing at home 10 times more than you are already. And that positive press coverage, whether it be TV or other outlets, is a great way to do that. So, with that in mind, and let's focus particularly then on the TV coverage, because I know that a lot of the care homes listening will be thinking, well, what kind of story is it that I should be pitching? How should I pitch it? So maybe, Samara, you can share we can talk about what kind of stories will give you the best chance of getting showcased on the regional BBC News.
Yeah, so there's a number of different strategies to secure TV coverage. The first is just to tap into the news agenda. So what's going on in the wider news? So, for example, for one of our care homes that we worked with, there was a big story about bed blocking. So there was lots of noise about NHS bed blocking and how difficult it was to discharge patients, particularly older people. So the story goes, and it just so happened that it wasn't necessarily created off the back of the news agenda. It just so happened that this particular care home was offering Tai Chi to reduce the number of falls in their care home. So they were helping residents by running Tai Chi classes to improve strength and agility. And I saw that as an opportunity because I thought, okay, well, that's incredible that they're already doing that. But actually, the bigger news agenda is talking about bed blockings. So what we need to do is show a great shining example of a care home that's actually trying to help take the pressure off the NHS to reduce these number of falls because bed blocking is such a big crisis. That was a great example of just jumping on hijacking, really news hijacking. So we knew that the bigger story was the bed blocking, but then how could we make our story about Tai Chi relevant and interesting, something that the press would want to come, particularly the broadcast press would want to come and film.
Yeah.
And with that, I guess this leads on to another strategy to employers, very much visual. So your story has to have a visual element to it. So there has to be something that the film crew can come and film and bring to life, as it were. So lots of care homes have music therapy. Lots of care homes have dog therapy. There's all different visual things, amazing visual things that are great for TV. It's packaging it up in the right way that creates a news hook and a story that's of interest. So, for example, there was a resident I worked with at a care home who was blind, and she used to play the piano, and she hasn't played for a number of years due to various health conditions and complications. But a young volunteer, an 18-year-old volunteer, came into the home and started playing the piano. And this lady heard the music and was encouraged to go back and start to play again. And she did, and she loved it. And it was so heartwarming. And I invited it created the story on the back of that and invited the local, I think it was ITV, to come and to meet with this particular resident and the volunteer and to talk about her experience. And also the music that she played was incredible. So it brought it to life. It was something visual, something that people could listen to. And it was showing ultimately the main thing here, this care home that really harnesses that support and brings back the aura of people if it has, for example, not been there for a while. And that was a lovely story. So two very different angles. That you know, the story about the resident that played the piano had nothing to do with the wider news. It was just a heartfelt story,
Mm,
and I knew that I could give the media a visual of the resident playing the piano, the sound of the music.
mm,
I knew that she was happy to be interviewed. I knew that the volunteer, the 18-year-old volunteer, was happy to be interviewed, and I also knew the care home manager was happy to be interviewed. So as
mm,
well as having a story, you need to package it up for press in a
mm,
way that gives them exactly what they need. And
mm,
from doing this over and over again, they need ultimately 2 to 3 interview opportunities. So
mm,
they want the human interest angle. They want to understand a bit more about the story from that person's perspective, and they want something to film. They
mm,
want to have something very, very visual. So, and I think just leading on to the types of
mm,
stories, it's very much human interest.
mm,
So it's very much how is whatever we are, whatever story that we're crafting, how is that benefiting a person or the family or the people, as it were,
mm,
and
mm.
using a person that usually a resident to give their side of the story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the number of things you've talked about. I always say that generally journalists, and that include, regional journalists, and that includes the local TV journalists, love to hear about good care home stories
Yeah.
because, and this is a message I want to really stress that because sometimes there is like, well, what stories? I don't know what stories. It's the press, and they're going to turn things around. But the message I always want to convey is actually journalists love good care home stories, regional press. Why? Because all those things you're talking about, the strong human interest, the
Yeah.
volunteer and the resident who she helped bring back the passion for playing the piano, a strong human interest. And then you've talked about the visual side. And again, care homes are usually very good at that because they have a lot of people. There is, the activities that you're mentioning, pony therapy, just for an example. And then if you gave a nice example, if you're able just to connect it with something that has a bit more gravitas, like the national interest. But for example, the care homes that we look after and help, they are experts in often, supporting people with dementia. And that's a
Mhm.
huge national issue right now. So again, often the stories that we're looking at and you're pitching can be linked to a something that has more gravitas.
Yeah,
And if you
absolutely.
can link all those elements, visual, human interest with the gravitas, that you're going to have a very, very strong pitch
Yeah. I was
to,
going to say as
to the
well, Adam,
TV.
just to mention, sorry,
Go
just
on,
to
far
mention
away.
as well as part of that question, well, what we're going to talk about are our stories. The local press, the local broadcast press are very interested in community engagement and community
Mm,
link.
mm,
Particularly if you are, for example, a story not so long ago with a care home who had an allotment and they were growing fruit and vegetables and they donated them to the local food bank. You know, coming together, that real sense of community is is great. That's like gold for local press because all they're interested in is what is happening on the ground here and what can
mm,
we bring to life and how can we show the great things that happen in our region. Well, all we're doing essentially is delivering them that information. This is what's happening on your doorstep, and this
mm,
is really positive and uplifting, and it's helping so many people in different ways. It's helping the residents of a care home by, like you said, living with dementia, helping them to garden and to remember that love and joy that they had, and bringing that food to people in need within the community is just, it's gold, and it's a real feel good, and it's what journalists are looking for,
mm.
particularly the regional
That's
journalists.
great. That's great. And tomorrow, let's move on to pitching these stories to the TV
The
journalist.
dreaded pitch.
Yeah. So let's talk or share about how that's best done.
Yeah. So from my personal experience, I love being on the telephone. I love to pick up the phone. So for me, you will always get somebody at the news desk. Always. There's somebody is manning that news desk telephone. You've got forward planning, but you've also got news for that week, for example. So I would always well, first and foremost, you would write a press release. So you would gather all of the information that you need on that particular story. I would always ask before pitching to any local television, I'd ask the care home, do we have a spokesperson, number one, from the care home who is willing, who is happy, who is comfortable, feels that they are, can represent the care home in a positive way. I've never had a problem with a care home manager or wellbeing activity coordinator saying no or not wanting to be involved. So that's always great. Also, if it's a story about a resident, making sure that they have media permission, making sure that the family are happy for them to be involved in the story. So doing all the sort of behind the scenes work before you get to that point where you're pitching. So once you've got your press release and you've got 2 or 3 people willing to be interviewed, I would always pick up the phone and speak to somebody on the news desk and give them a short synopsis about the story itself and just ask the question, is this of interest? 9 times out of 10, because I've crafted so many of these stories, they'll say, it sounds great, please could you send it through to said email address, which is usually either theirs or a general email. From that point, I would write a very, very short introductory email of what the story is, very short, a couple of lines, but I always make it very clear that there are this person, and this person up for interview, as well as this, and this to film. So that they know that lands in their inbox. Okay, this person has delivered me a package, a full package. I'm not having to think, oh, that sounds like a story, but can we record them doing that? Or could we interview that person? It's very clearly stated that this is what I'm offering. This is the story. These are the case study, the people that you can interview, and this is what is going to be available for you to film on that day. And from that point, then, if there's an interest, there'll be a response back to that email, or they'll give me a call and say, yes, we're very interested. And how television tends to work is they only really decide a day or so before. So it can happen very, very quickly. If you're pitching a story on a Monday, they could be coming to film on the Thursday, Friday, depending on their schedules. So it's very exciting and it all happens quite quickly, unless it's something for the future, in which case, or if it's not time sensitive, for example. So you could pitch something in and they might be really interested, but it might just be that they don't have the time, to cover it at this point, but they've got it in their diary and they'll come back to you. What I would say on TV coverage is to never pitch in when there's a crisis, like a regional crisis taking place, or, something big has happened, or the budget, or anything to do with something that's taking up the time of a journalist, and that is taking up the time. Leave it, don't pitch it, park it. Just wait until that nothing has broken in your region, like breaking news. There doesn't seem to be anything that is going to any barrier really for them to either see your story if you can't speak to somebody, or show an interest in your story.
And what about those?
Important.
Yeah, that's great, Samara. Thank you. And what about those who are listening who are wondering, well, how do I know who to contact, which journalist to pitch to? How do I get their contact details? What
Yeah.
would you advise on that?
So, like I said, I would always pick up the phone. If you type in BBC BBC Look North, for example, up in Yorkshire, you will find the news desk number very quickly through a Google search. Call them up, somebody answers that telephone, they're manning that phone. From that point, they will give you an email address, and it might just be the look.north@BBC. It might be the person that picks up the phone is also looking for stories, so they might give you their email address. So making that first call will then give you the information that you need, whether it's going to go down the general news desk email, or they might give you their personal email address and ask you to copy in forward planning or the general news desk email address. So actually that part's quite simple in terms of finding out who you need to speak to.
And I love what you say about making sure that you give them, the journalist, the package, because it's important to think, as you say, you want to do the journalist work for them.
Absolutely.
You're going to present them a great story, number one. So there is this important step of knowing, as we discussed, a few moments ago, about the story, and then making sure that when you're pitching it, the journalist, as you rightly say, is like, well, I need, who can I speak to? When can I come? And those essential elements. And by making sure that's very clear in that note, as you're saying, Samara, like I always say, present the story so they literally can see it they can copy and paste the story in terms of the story, but with the TV journalists, you're telling them who they can interview, that they're available, and you've done their work for them, and they're going to
Yeah.
really, really like you for that. So that's a key. I think that's a key tip you're sharing here, Samara,
Yeah.
and
I think
thinking
it's
that
just
other people.
Yeah, and it's just the four W's. It's who, what, where, when. It's giving that information there. And how TV works is they don't work alone, they work in a team.
Mm,
So all they need to do then is forward that on. There's no coming backwards and forwards asking questions. And you've got to remember we're all fighting for that to secure that space.
yes.
You know, there's lots of competition. So if you can come forward with a really simple template that they can forward onto their planning, and then for them to look at it and go, great, well, we know we've got so and so, so they're great, we'll put it in our diary. We know we don't
Mm,
even need to go back to said person to discuss anything. We'll put it in our diary. And then at the time when it comes to actually wanting to move forward, then they usually call and say, we'd like to come to the said care home on this date. Does that work? What time's
mm,
best? Then
mm,
it sort of goes from there.
yeah.
But yes, the initial pitch is very much who, what,
Mm,
why, when, making it
yeah.
really simple.
And what about those who listening and may have concerns, anxieties about, oh, I don't know how a care home's going to look. I don't know if so and so is going to say the right thing. I'm worried they're not going to come out very well. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think from experience, and Adam, you can probably agree with this, but from a Springup perspective, certainly, we always make sure that whoever we are suggesting is going to be the spokesperson feels very comfortable doing so. And that might mean a bit of training beforehand. And I say training in quite loose terms, just more of a case of a bit of a practice, a bit of a script, not a script in terms of what they're going to say, but a script in terms of how the media work. Nothing is ever recorded live for a start. So anything that if the local press, local TV station comes to your care home and you say something, for example, as a care home manager, and you don't want that to go ahead, all you have to say is, can you help me? Can you ignore that? I'd like to say this. So I just reassure, really, just
Mm,
reassure that, that they're not out to get you. They're there to present your home and yourself in a really positive light. So, and as I said, nothing is ever recorded live. It's all pre-recorded. So there's
mm,
opportunity to really say what you want to say. But yeah, I think ahead of any sort of TV coverage, it's just a case of just some very brief training as to what a journalist might ask, the sort of questions they might get asked, and then how to respond. And I think it's sort of down to the individual, but it's not scary.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
the journalists that
Yeah.
we work with are all so lovely, and
Yeah.
so they make you feel at ease. And
Mm,
it isn't. Oh, I'm really nervous. I'm really scared. I think it's just almost one of those things like rip the plaster off, do it once, and then
yeah.
you'll know it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, and I think the stories that we're really working on, they are positive news stories, the kind of examples that we've given at the beginning of this episode. And the journalists are there just to make everyone look good. Yeah,
Yeah,
because they want to make good TV. That means everyone they talk to helping them look good so they can edit, they can redo, they can retake, they can do everything to make the whole experience good from their point of view and the care home. Now, I know that sometimes care home people, it can be manager activities, go, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be on TV. I'm too, they have that. But I think that 98% of the time, in fact, I don't remember ever a time when it just didn't go well.
yeah. So
Because the thing is as well is that if it's a manager or an activities person, if you ask them a question about what they do, they can speak and they can speak eloquently and they do very, very well. So I think that there is an anxiety on some, unrightly so, I get it, about doing it. Um, but the reality is that the journalists there will make you feel really at ease. They will do anything to make it easier for you.
yeah,
And that's how it is. And on the point of media training, again, sometimes we get it, oh, to what extent should our people be media trained? Well, I'm kind of with you on this. It's like, well, it's a good story. They're going to be talking about the home. maybe, just talk through about, do a little bit of a, casual rehearsal, if you like, the things, go through some of the questions that may be asked. But there is, in my view, no real need to have a kind of formalized media training and all of that. Because, this is not crisis work. This is a great story, which I know the home will be, and everyone involved will be very happy to talk about, and will do very, very well to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah.
Uh,
And just on
and,
that as well, a lot of journalists now, they don't come with big film crews. They come
yeah.
on their own with a camera. So it isn't scary. It isn't, oh gosh, what am I getting myself into? It's very, if at most two people. And like Adam says, just very, they are, yeah, just people wanting to make your care home and make you look great so that their content looks great.
Mm,
So
mm. And on the issue of consent, which is obviously important, you have to make sure that people who are in camera have given their consent with that. Now, what I would say again is the journalists you work with get this, they will understand this, and they will double check with you, and they will work with you. So, so and so, we can't have so and so in camera. Fine, we'll make sure that so and so isn't in camera. So again, I don't know what you think, Samara, but perhaps this kind of reassurance for those people thinking of making these pictures that the journalists you work with will work with you on issues of consent, and it's something they understand and they are dealing with the whole time.
yeah, absolutely. You're right, Adam. They are very cautiously aware of consent, and our job is to make sure that we always have media consent as well. And yeah, I've never come across any issues on that front.
Mm, mm. And Samara, that's great. So, f finally, maybe just talk about the pitching and the follow up, how you approach the follow up. Let's say you make a pitch and like 9 times out of 10 you will not get any response. How you might think about following up that pitch.
Yeah. So as I said, I always try and speak to somebody on the telephone first and foremost, in the original pitch, and then I'll send the email. If I haven't heard anything, and I don't know, and it all depends on the timing of the story and sort of if it's time sensitive or whether it can wait a little while. If it is time sensitive, I will get back on the telephone again and just maybe in a couple of days' time, just to reflag it, say just wondering if you've seen this story. And is whether it's of interest, and try and get a definitive yes, no, or it might be a maybe still. And in which case, I'll reflag the email so it's the top of the inbox, and leave it with them. After, if I haven't heard anything again, a couple of days later, I might call one more time if it's not time sensitive, just to see if it's again a definitive yes or a no. And then if it is time sensitive and I haven't heard, the likelihood is it's not going to be covered. But don't let that defeat you, because there could be a number of reasons why that story hasn't been used. As I said, we're all sort of fighting for that same spot. They might have already used care home story that week, for example, and there's all sorts of different variables and so many different reasons why stories aren't picked up. But if I do have a definitive yes, as I mentioned, it sort of quite quickly then gets past that email chain, and somebody usually from the broadcast would call me, and then I would obviously update the care home that they are looking to come, they want to come. But again, with TV, just to make everybody aware, if something breaking news happens on the day that they say they're coming to your care home for a story that isn't time sensitive, the likelihood is it will get bumped. So it will be replaced by the breaking news. But that doesn't mean it's over. That just means, okay, so haven't been able to come this particular day. Can the story on our side be not recreated, but can it wait until the week later? If the answer is yes, then it's just keeping in touch with the journalist, keeping that relationship going and saying, we're really keen to have you in and really would love you to come and cover this story at a time that suits you. And
Mhm.
just understanding whether there's an opportunity to pick it back up if in the unfortunate circumstances of breaking news, which it can't be helped.
Mm, mm. That's great, Samara. And so we get the coverage. The home is featured positively on the news, and it's as we said from the very top of this episode, that this is kind of premium, good news coverage for the care home, reaching this audience you want to be reaching. But it also, again, and I just want to come back to this, we said from the top of this episode about the other positives is for your team, your care teams as well, and also for residents. It's a very positive experience pretty much for everyone. It's a great morale booster for the team. And it's a great recognition of the and showcasing of the work that the care teams do. So that was something I think it's worth just really doubling down on and emphasizing. And something I always say to care homes when we're helping them out is that, look, great, you've got this great coverage. And again, that TV coverage, but again, it can be for every other kind of positive news coverage you get in the press. It's like get the coverage, but make sure all your network know about it as well. All your commissioners, healthcare partners, make sure you email them all out saying, have you seen us on the news or this item? Again, it helps just really double down and position you as an expert in caring for the elderly and a great care home doing great care work. So, something I think is worth doing. I don't know if you've got any final thoughts on that, Samara.
Yeah, just on that as well, the broadcast media are really, really good at sending through a clipping of the feature. So it's usually around 3 minutes long, and you can upload that to YouTube. And then, as Adam says, share that with the wider network via email, social media. It's a great piece, especially when it's positive, to be sharing further afield. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, everyone. So there you have it. How to get your care homes on TV. Now, make sure if you want to be promoting your homes, get the word out there and getting your TV coverage, and just go and do it as Samara and I are talking about here today. And make sure if you like this episode, please make sure you subscribe. Click the like button, subscribe, tell your colleagues, share this with your colleagues. There's nothing better for a care home to get positive TV coverage. It really is a feel-good factor. So make sure, please, you just go and implement. So thank you very much, Samara, for being on the Care Home PR Marketing podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.